Okay, everyone, Luigi Mangione is back in the news. When I last visited this case, the state and federal courts were conducting evidentiary hearings on motions to suppress evidence filed by his defense team. And the defense did an excellent job. Mangione is working with bad facts, though. Just no way around that. According to reports, the federal court denied all suppression motions, and the state court denied all suppression motions except for the magazine that was found in his backpack. It seems there was an issue with the search because the police in Altoona, Pennsylvania, at the McDonald's where Mangione was apprehended, were being super careful about the backpack so as not to compromise his Fourth Amendment rights, so they missed the gun in the backpack initially. I believe they located it during the inventory search. In any event, the magazine was suppressed for the state trial, but all of the other evidence goes in. Now, the defense attorneys are having a heck of a time balancing the state and federal cases. New York State doesn't have a death penalty, but I've always believed that Mangione will be put to death eventually for killing Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare. And that still is my belief, even though in the federal case, the judge dismissed the death penalty eligible count from the indictment: murder through use of a firearm. Now, that count is an aggravated offense dependent on an underlying crime of violence. In Mangione's case, the prosecutors charged him with 2 counts of stalking across state lines, but the defense got the death penalty eligible count dismissed by arguing successfully to the federal district judge that the crime of stalking isn't a crime of violence. Now, the prosecution could have filed an interlocutory appeal, which means an appeal of an issue during the middle of a case instead of waiting until the end. Now, here the U.S. attorney decided they're not going to file an interlocutory appeal. Now, that doesn't mean they can't appeal the dismissal of the death penalty eligible count. They're just going to wait until after the verdict, which presumably will be guilty on both stalking counts. Now, the defense will appeal the guilty verdicts, of course. So in connection with that appeal, the U.S. attorney can appeal the dismissal of the death penalty eligible count. Now, there's no double jeopardy issue with that. In the federal case, the defendant won't be tried this time around on murder through use of a firearm. As the Supreme Court of the United States has said about that, an accused must suffer jeopardy before he can suffer double jeopardy. Now, since he won't be tried on murder through use of a firearm this time around, he can be tried after the appeal if the appeals court reverses the dismissal of that charge. And the debate here is strictly one of law. So the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals could find that stalking is innately a crime of violence. Now, the district judge at the federal trial level said no, it's not a crime of violence. But the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals could find, for example, that just because stalking doesn't always result in death or injury doesn't mean it's not innately a crime of violence. And regardless of how the appeals court rules on that legal issue, the U.S. attorney could bring a superseding indictment with additional charges that might be death penalty eligible. So, if Mangione comes through an eventual appeal of his federal case without a death penalty eligible charge, I'll be surprised. Now, let me circle back to the beginning of this video when I said Luigi Mangione is back in the news. Indeed. Earlier this week, his defense attorneys told the state court, New York State, that they would be using the defense of extreme emotional disturbance. Now, that defense need only be proven by a preponderance of the evidence, which is a lower quantum of proof than beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, they would need to prove that Mangione suffered from a psychiatric issue when he killed Brian Thompson. It's still an admission to the killing, but would result in a reduced sentence. 5 to 25 years, I guess it is now. But then, a day later, the defense filed a letter with the court saying they are withdrawing that defense at this time. So, the legal news media flipped out. Of course, everyone's speculating that the defense is burdened by the parallel state and federal cases, and that speculation is based on Mangione's verbalization during his court appearance in New York State, in which he cried out, "State and federal cases are double jeopardy by any common sense definition," or words to that effect. And his fan base swooned. And they contributed even more to his legal defense fund, which is at $5 million now. Now, the defense of extreme emotional disturbance isn't available in the federal case, so legal analysts have theorized that since the defense requires admitting to the killing, that admission would be used against him in the federal case. And if he uses the defense in the state case, the judge said the defense needed to unseal the psychological information. Now, one news report had even indicated that the judge asked the defense, what is the mental condition that he suffers from? And apparently the defense just said they wanted to keep those records sealed. Now, maybe that's because of the federal case, which is the scary one, okay? Because a death penalty eligible count could be added to the federal case in the future or be reinstated after an appeal, at which point he will be pleading insanity, okay? Now, maybe the psychological tests already show extreme psychological disturbance, but there may be reasons why the defense doesn't want to publicize those results, especially if the jury lets him off. Now, maybe Mangione and his family still plan for him to live a normal life, which, I mean, we all can see will never happen, but his defense attorneys, it's possible they tried to reason with their client and it's just not working. Now, he probably doesn't want to be found insane because he wants to go back to living his life. Now, if he's insane, he'll be hospitalized, and he doesn't want that. And that's my theory as to why there was a sudden backtracking on the extreme emotional disturbance defense. In my view, the sudden shift in the legal defense strategy could have been directed by Mangione himself. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.